introduce you. I'm not going to see your name until EC17.
No, EB17.
Yep.
Excuse me. I'm going to make the apology to them about the sunglasses coming off when I introduce when I'm putting them back on to speak.
These are facing that way. With the sun in there.
Exactly. Now that would have been horrifying. Would have made for a horrible shot too. You got this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Hey, John. John. Good morning. This morning we're joined by dozens of survivors of sexual abuse by Robert Anderson. But these brave men and women are also victims of abuse by the University of Michigan. These survivors, dozens of them, were students, athletes, and members of the public who trusted the University of Michigan to protect them. Some of these brave men played football at the university in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and won national championships for the university. They filled that stadium over there. These brave survivors are the University of Michigan, and these survivors demand accountability and transparency from the University of Michigan. The University of Michigan has failed to acknowledge its own failures, but rather only pointed the finger at Robert Anderson. The university has failed to apologize for their coaches, athletic trainers, athletic staff, other employees at the university, doctors, therapists, counselors, and members of the administration who failed to act despite decades of reports of Anderson's conduct. The university also promised transparency to these survivors. The Wilmer Hill report failed to provide the full truth of Anderson's abuse and, more importantly, Michigan's failures. These survivors call upon the Board of Regents, who have a meeting tomorrow evening, to cooperate with the Attorney General's office for a full and complete investigation. These survivors demand accountability and transparency from the University of Michigan. With me this morning are a number of survivors of the University of Michigan and Robert Anderson. The first one I would like to welcome is plaintiff EB17.
Because of the fact that we have the sun, I'm going to take my glasses off to introduce myself, and then I will be putting them back on. Good morning. For the last year, I have been known as John Doe EB17 in our litigation. My particular job was to give interviews to the local media, to ESPN, New York Times, Washington Post, under the name of John Doe EB17. That comes to an end this morning. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Richard Goldman. I was a student at the University of Michigan from 1981 until 1983. I was a student broadcaster at what was then known as WJJX, WCBN Ann Arbor, tied into WUOM. Pardon me while I do this. In 1981, when I first came up on campus, I was a rookie broadcaster, as they say, for this university. I went into Coach Bo Schembechler's office. He didn't know me from Adam, and I said to him, I need help. I need help on what the depth chart will be. And he took me in at that point in time voluntarily, and for the next 3 years treated me as if I was one of his members of the family and his son. Late in 1981, I came into Bo, and I was sitting with him, and I had suffered for many years with migraine headaches. Bo saw that I could not see him literally across his desk, immediately suggested that I go to Dr. Robert Anderson for one thing and one thing only, to get a referral to the university hospital to find one of the particular doctors or experts that could help with the migraines. I went to see Dr. Anderson, and when I went to see Dr. Anderson, obviously there's difference in body parts between one's head and one's below. I'm not going to even describe that today. He decided that in the middle of the conversation that I was having with him to get a referral, that he was going to reach down and grab what in Yiddish we would call the beit seam. That's the only way I'm going to put it today in front of the media. I immediately went back to Bo after walking out of his office. I did not get a referral because I just felt something was wrong. And I went into Bo and I said, this just happened. The employee that Bo was said, go to Don Canham, who was his employer as the athletics director. I went into Don Canham's office, said, something's wrong. He sat there and stared at me, said nothing. Let's fast forward to 1982. The migraines were still there. Schembechler again, and foolish me, said, you got to get to Anderson because he has to give you the referrals. Okay, this time he tried to do a physical exam and started pulling my pants down, and I pushed him away and walked away. Went back to Bo's office, same thing. Go to Don Canham. Went to Canham's office. Told him the same thing. He sat there as silent as the media is looking at me today. 1983 is where it all comes to a head. In 1983, I went into Anderson's office to meet with his then whoever secretary and said, look, the migraines are bad. I've had a referral. I've been on a particular medication. That medication was just yanked from the market because they found a cocaine derivative in it. We got a problem. Well, he calls me into his office, and the first thing he does before he says a word is says, lie down on the table, I'm going to do a physical. The answer is go to hell. Because there's not a chance in hell that I'm going to let him go to my nether regions when I have a migraine. This time, I marched back into the sports information area, marched past it, went to the athletics office, bypassed Bo's office, went into Canham's office, slammed the door, and said to him, quote, what in the hell? It's been 2 years. Obviously, you've done nothing. He just tried to do this to me. The first time in 3 years, he spoke to me and told me to go F myself, quote, unquote. At that point, I walked out of his office, slammed my hand literally on the wall where Schembechler's office was near. He came out. He said, what just happened? I told him. He proceeded to go into Canham's office, slam the door, and he read him the riot act. Now, I could hear Bo clearly of what he was saying, and he was telling Canham, quote, what in the hell are you doing? Why hasn't this man been fired? This is the third time that this has happened. Why have you done nothing? At that point in time, I graduated and left the campus. It's been all these years. Now, for what happened to me, I never spoke to my parents. I never told them what happened. I never told my late brother what happened. I never told anybody until many years later with my wife, who herself could not believe that I was telling her after all these years. But that's when the lawsuits began, and that's when I began my story. Now, we can play the circus act, and we can play the game with the university. Now, I am going to be 61 years old at the end of June. I guess I'm going to be very elderly. The games have to stop. Whatever one thinks of Bo Schembechler, doesn't matter. Can we laser focus on the fact that the employee went to the employer? The employer was Don Canham. The 60s and 70s don't matter. Why? Because he had from 1981 to 83 to do something about Dr. Robert Anderson, and he did nothing. That's where we need to focus. Now, I do want to apologize up front to the Canham family for having to drag them through what they're about to be dragged through. I'm very sorry. You don't deserve this. However, Don Canham, as the athletics director, had the power way back in the 60s. He did nothing. The 70s, he did nothing. Now, we had those 3 years that I was up here as a broadcaster to do something, and he did nothing. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Next, Ted Deluca is going to speak.
Good morning. University of Michigan. I am Tad Deluca. I was very close to this spot in January of 1972 during a recruiting trip. The wrestling coach showed me this very impressive stadium and told me all sorts of wonderful things about the Michigan wrestling team, the training facilities, and the medical facilities in the case I ever needed treatment for a wrestling injury. Last week, 3 brave survivors came forward and shared their experience of abuse. Not just abuse by Anderson, but abuse by the University of Michigan. I stand here with my brothers and sisters. We are not just victims of Robert Anderson, but perhaps more importantly, we are victims of an institution that failed us for more than 4 decades. An institution that continues to intentionally fail to accept accountability for its decades of failures and cover-ups. Michigan has apologized for Anderson only. No one has apologized for what the university did. No one apologized for Bo. No one apologized for Don Canham. There was no apology for Thomas Easthope for failing to do his job on several different occasions. I have not heard apologies for every coach, athletic director, human services vice president, or university president from 1968 to 2003. That's 45 years. Michigan's culture of protecting sexual abuse has continued up until right now, today, 10:14 a.m. Last week, the brave survivors came forward. U of M issued the following statement. Our sympathy for all of Anderson's victims is deep and unwavering, and we thank them for their bravery in coming forward. We condemn and apologize for the tragic misconduct of the late Dr. Robert Anderson, who left the university 17 years ago and died 13 years ago. We are committed to resolving their claims and to continuing the court-guided confidential mediation process. Trying to hide in the passage of time doesn't work. For the last 17 years, Michigan has not changed the culture. An example of that is Provost Filbert. On the Michigan sex abuse calendar, his abuse was inflicted yesterday. U of M continues to promote a culture of sexually inappropriate conduct. Their actions show they don't want change. The university doesn't want transparency about Anderson and his accomplices, whether they're living or dead. The Wilmer Hale report fails to provide us with the full truth and transparency we deserve. I stand here with my brothers and sisters and demand transparency. I call on the U of M Board of Regents to cooperate and to allow Attorney General's office to conduct a true investigation where all questions are not only asked but also answered. An investigation where everything is uncovered. Yes, I'm saying that the investigation done by the University of Michigan hired law firm Wilmer Hale is not enough. Regents, Amer, Bean, Bernstein, Illich, and others, you supported and contributed to Dana Nessel's campaign. If you trusted her to look out for the citizens of the state of Michigan, why can't you trust and have faith in her to conduct a true, in-depth investigation of the University of Michigan for us and all the hundreds who are not here today? I have demand here, and I don't want to use demand because I don't want to appear angry. Regents, please show compassion and cooperate with Attorney General Dana Nessel's Office for Truth and Transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Next, John Vaughn.
My name is John Vaughn. I attended the University of Michigan from August 1988 to January 1991 as a student athlete, member of the football team. Like many others before and after me, I was ruthlessly, repeatedly, and regularly raped by Dr. Anderson at least 45 times. But I'm not here to speak about that today, about Anderson's abuse of hundreds or even thousands of students and athletes. I'm here to demand a call to immediate and specific action with transparency, accountability, and full investigation by the University of Michigan, So leadership, the Board of Regents, the Big Ten Conference, and the NCAA. I speak today to University of Michigan students, parents, athletic sponsors and boosters, investigative journalists, and most importantly, my Michigan man brothers and other survivors of the largest, most insidious conspiracy to cover up rape, sexual abuse, grooming, and gaslighting of the truth in the history of sports. Today, we go from victims who suffered abuse to survivors who take action. The following 3 points are an immediate call to action for the University of Michigan Board of Regents. 1. As events of the past 50 years have demonstrated, the University of Michigan, the Big Ten Conference, and the NCAA simply cannot be trusted to protect the young, vulnerable lives of either students or athletes. Today, the 3 organizations must contribute $50 million each, totaling $150 million to provide the seed capital for an independent nonprofit specifically created to eradicate the enabling and institutional complicity which results in the culture of abuse and rape against both students and athletes at the University of Michigan and the other Big Ten universities. This effort will begin in the Big Ten, but when the programs are mature, they can be utilized by other university associations and athletic conferences. Half of the board will be victims who will hold positions of authority, equal to other members who are in positions of authority in the athletic department and in leadership to fully understand the depth of the issues and be immersed in this tremendous undertaking. 2, make publicly available every single document related to every person either involved or affected by sexual abuse at the University of Michigan, with appropriate protection for the victims. For example, open up my personal records and show me the chain of custody of where my sperm samples I was forced to give under the hocus pocus guise of medical treatment and research in athletes like me. There are thousands of students. Open up the records now. Open up the records without claiming that they are privacy or HIPAA restrictions, because it is we, the patients, who have the right and entitlement to this information and are demanding it. Number 3, in 2020, more than $9 million was paid to victims because of ongoing sexual harassment claims at the highest levels of University of Michigan. This is the responsibility of the Board of Regents. When does it end? The time has passed for false apologies that place blame in the past. There still exists a pattern of sexual misconduct on campus in which accountability is often out of reach, takes years to achieve, or is excused away. The Board of Regents must today authorize the University of Michigan to fully and completely cooperate with an independent investigation by Attorney General Dana Nessel's office now. Additionally, the Board of Regents shall immediately fill 2 board positions with former university students and athletes who were victims of sexual abuse while attending the University of Michigan. I and those victims coming alongside me will continue to fight for justice for all sexual abuse victims at the University of Michigan, and we will expose the entire truth of this evil. We will no longer be anonymous. We will no longer be faceless. We will no longer be silent. We will fight for those who feel that they do not have a voice. We will stand together in this fight. We will not retreat until justice is served. A message to those students and athletes consider coming to the University of Michigan and those who are here now. Don't let the university and its monsters steal your talent, your life, and most importantly, your dreams and your name. A message to the athletic boosters, financial supporters, and corporate athletic partners of the University of Michigan. Is it worth your good name to contribute your dollars and resources to the University of Michigan, who thus far have been unwilling to be truthful, accountable, and compassionate to the extraordinary number of sexual abuse victims who were and are in their care? Is the action of opening your wallet worth the inaction of the University of Michigan in failing to protect students and athletes for the sake of money and medals? Is it worth it to you to be a co-conspirator with the University of Michigan and turn a blind eye to hundreds of young men and women who were sexually assaulted. And finally, what the University of Michigan did not kill me. It was a hellish experience, but I am alive. The naive teenager who was recruited to Ann Arbor in 1988, now standing here before you in 2021, is a man, a Michigan man. So Board of Regents, so the University of Michigan, say my name. Because the time is now for all of you who have been abused here to speak up for justice. We will speak. Because every victim matters. I matter. I am not John Doe. I am John Vaughn. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I want to thank all of you for being here today. More importantly, thank you to all the survivors here with us today, showing their support and refusing to be silenced, and all the survivors out there as they deal with the events that took place and help us as we move forward to hold the university accountable. Thank you. We will not be taking questions from the podium, but we'll entertain questions later on and throughout the day. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm ready to rock. Yeah, good job.